those populations and learn more was really important. And then also adding depth to self-reflection and understanding how our life experiences impact the way that we practice clinically and professionally. So I had the wonderful opportunity of having Dr. LA as a mentor, as a PhD student, and then as well as a new educator. I'd worked as adjunct, but not full-time at a university. And so she's really helped hone in on my professional identity. And that was something that I looked for.
Yeah, so I'll jump in next. So to answer the first question, what are some benefits of receiving and providing student mentorship? So I think of three things. I think of
9977.
And I think of collaboration, and I also think of those who provide mentorship.
Dr. Bernstein?
Can I just remind everybody to please put themselves on mute when you come in? Hit mute.
That's all I take.
Caitlin, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, so, yeah, no problem. So I think of synthesis, and when I say synthesis, I think of also those who are serving as the role of mentoring students as a GPS per se. So I'm coming into the program. I am new into the well, not now, but I'm coming into the program. I'm new. I don't know what's what. I have this idea of what counseling is, and then I see a counselor educator who has already amassed all this wealth of experience and all this just clinical knowledge and way of understanding what I'm trying to contribute to the general profession. And then they're able to synthesize what I'm saying, what my passions are, and what my research interests are, and then they make it tangible. So they are already, they've been to where I've been, they went through the master's program and gotten their PhD, so they know where I'm trying to go. And so they're already there, and they're still learning and growing. Of course, it doesn't stop, but as far as like being able to reflect that back onto counselors who are eager, who are ready, they're able to synthesize and kind of minimize the distractions and allow us to localize what we want to do into something that's tangible, something that's realistic, and something that won't overwhelm us. Because I think when we come into, well, when I came into the profession, I was so eager, I was so ready, I wanted to do everything all at once. And I think Dr. LA was one of the more critical pieces as far as teaching me that there's sustainability. Like, I will be a counselor forever, you know, that won't go away. And day by day, that I have the opportunity to counsel. Day by day, I have the opportunity to be a person who joins a person's journey. Then I have another day to make that impact. So things that I won't be able to accomplish today, that is okay. I did make the attempt to help someone out, and then be a counselor to serve into that role, whatever the client needs me to be. So that helped me pace myself in the sense of, I know that counseling will be a lifelong journey and it'll be a lifelong process. So having that person who has already been to where I've been, going through the imposter syndrome, going through doubts, going through like being so critical of self, am I doing a good job? And so they're able to reflect that back to me and say, okay, well, I've been where you've been and I know what you're dealing with. So it's also good to have that secondary voice that's also neutral and that's also supporting. And so that is an extreme benefit for myself as far as providing student mentorship.
I'll follow up. This is Andrew. I wanted to say a couple of things about really the receiving end of it is really important to remember how you felt when you started. So I remember when I first walked into a Penn State branch campus and, you know, someone sat me down and said, hey, this is going to be okay. So when I think about receiving, I think about connection and calmness. Because when I first walked into that, you know, school, college for the first time, I don't know what I'm doing. I signed up for a degree that I don't even know what kind of job I'm going to get with it. You just want to know, like, am I going to make it out of here? Am I going to be okay? So when I think about providing, I want to give someone the sense of that when they get done with the session or we get off that call, because I want to feel how I felt as like that, you know, 18-year-old kid for a reason, because you're just a kid at that point, walking in to that, you know, guidance office and just hoping they say something that sticks and clicks. I was lucky enough to have someone in those moments where I was so vulnerable and new that I was able to find someone that I connected with. I felt calm when I walked out the door, and I knew I was going to be okay. I was going to make it through the next class, the next session, the next day. I was going to have an idea of what I'm working towards. So when I provide supervision now, I think the biggest thing I want to take away is I want them to feel like they, first of all, got something out of it, but also walk away feeling calm and being able to take on a goal that maybe they put off for a past week or two. Maybe that, license test is kind of getting to them and they don't want to do it, or kind of procrastinate a little bit more. So I just really want to provide something that's a push, because you need a push when it comes down to a mentor and supervision. And you also need some type of, you're with me. I have someone with me, that you're on the same team as somebody else.
I think I want to speak to it from the perspective of a faculty member. I mean, clearly I received my own mentorship, which I'll talk about with our next question. But as a professor, I think that this is probably the component that is the most rewarding for me, is mentoring and seeing the people that I've mentored as they become achievers and as they're contributing to the field. So when we talk about the benefits of receiving and giving, it does do a lot for me in my own professional growth and development to watch the people that I'm mentoring as they grow and as they, it's almost like the work that I'm doing becomes exponential, because as I pass on experience and skill and support to those that I'm supporting, they go out and they do it to 10 other people, and then they do it to 10 other people. And it's really interesting, to go to a conference or have an experience where somebody reaches out to me and says, oh, I heard about you from so-and-so who said you did this and this and this. And it's really interesting to see that impact of, when we give back to the profession, when we invest ourselves in others, the power that can have is pretty incredible, especially when we speak to social justice, when we speak to, creating equity and multicultural awareness. I mean, it's like you have to be a role model in that for that to actually become a reality in the world. And I think it's really important that we walk the talk and that we demonstrate it and we lead by example first.
I don't know what we're talking about.
So Justina, maybe we should go to the second question now.
Yes, so the second question is describe your own experiences with student mentorship and how that has impacted your professional counselor identity.
Okay, I'll start this question then. So some of my experiences with student mentorship, because coming into counseling, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I know that I kind of just gravitated towards counseling, but had no direction, direction at all. And matriculating through the program, I had some difficulties because I would often become so immersed with just trying to do everything again, doing everything at once. I didn't have that person to serve as a buffer to like slow me down and be like, hey, it's okay if you take some things off your plate. You're still necessary. You're still part of the counseling profession. You're still be able to contribute in some larger way. And one extreme, like one accolade that stood out to me that I thought it would like never happen to me was receiving the MDCC Minority Fellowship awardee status. And I had applied the first time, and I had some Dr. LA and Dr. Ford, my other mentors, kind of encouraged to say, okay, just apply and just go through the process. And I didn't get it the first time. I was deeply discouraged. I was like, well, I mean, at least I tried, but I did also understand that at that time I still had no direction. So after a year and it came back around again, I had did some more like as far as like strategic placing of like how I wanted to utilize my strengths, and I was able to gain some clinical experience and get some more direction and so much more focus. Then the next year I applied and I ended up getting the fellowship. And so it was just such a rewarding thing because I'm like, me, like just coming from like the direction, like career trajectory, I had no idea of the impact that one can make just by putting yourself out there and taking a risk and being vulnerable to being able to be supported, because that's a reciprocal thing. In order to be supported by someone, you also have to be supportive of yourself, and you have to also take care of yourself. And so now I'm at a point to now I have a couple of new counseling students who come to me for advice, and I'm like, it's just such a surreal moment. I'm like, you want to get advice from me, like me? And so like it goes back off to what Dr. Elliott was saying. This is exponential. You touch one person, they touch another person, then just it's exponential, and then we're all contributing to the larger body of counseling. And now my counselor identity is much more focused, much more localized, and I'm able to expound upon my research interests when I couldn't have done it before if I didn't have the mentorship. Those are 40.
I jump in and add something to this, Justina, because I'd like to add a little piece to this because I have a little insight into everybody on our panel. I'm wondering if the members of the panel have always been willing to receive mentorship from the beginning. So JJ, I don't know if you want to speak to that. You're not here.
You called me Dr. LA. So
You're not the only one. It's a whole panel, myself included.
I was not receptive to it. I thought I was in the beginning. I thought I was a very open person, but then I took the constructive feedback or opportunities for growth a little personally. I said, oh, so it's something wrong with me. As a counselor, I said, I don't like that feeling. So I kind of wanted to lay low and be like, okay, I'll just want to skate through the program, but I wasn't willing at first. And so they kind of blunted my growth as far as what, like how I was able to grow personally. And it's work that has to be done on the outside as well. I was only focused on my academic and my clinical output, that I wasn't focused on who is JJ when he closes the laptop, when he leaves the counseling session. Is he working on himself? What is he doing? And I had to get that reiterated to me in a couple of different ways. So the willingness kind of grew, but in the beginning, I wasn't as willing as I thought in relation to counseling, because you are a part, like I can't explain, like you bring something very special to the counseling relationship. You have to be present, you have to be aware, you have to be cognizant of the client that's in front of you. And you are affecting that just as much as the client is bringing their own things to counseling as well. But in the beginning, I was not receptive, but I grew to understand that like I said, the GPS, they have been where I've been, and they're gatekeepers for the profession. So they're doing this for a reason. They want to see me succeed and make an impact as well.
Thanks, JD.
I'll hop in. Great job, JJ. I wanted to add on a story that actually kind of helps me become receptive and more active in receiving student mentorship. Because when I came in, I was very kind of like, I'm already a therapist. I can already do this. I came into the my program and I was already working in the mental health field for a couple of years. So I kind of had a handle on what the field looks like in Pennsylvania. And I felt like, oh, I know what I'm doing already. Like, I just want to go through my program and get this master's degree and keep moving. For me, it was actually Dr. LA, when she was paying attention to me one day, it really taught me a lesson. We were just kind of going over the CPCE and NCE, kind of practice tests, and she's watching me. And then she talks to me after and says, like, your processing is wicked fast. And that to me, like, taught me a moment of someone is always watching you, like always present yourself in a manner that you want to be seen. So I really had carried that with me in my professional identity now, because whether I'm at a coffee shop or whether, I'm sitting down in a really fancy office doing counseling, it doesn't matter. Present yourself in the exact same way, whether you're on an elevator, because you never know who's watching and what type of position that could lead you into. So I know, Dr. Ella, you've actually wrote a note in my book saying that. So it also shows you remember things like that. And that's like sentimental to me now. So that says a lot to me. And even when I was offered this position, Justina approached me in the summer and just asked me, hey, would you be willing to do this? And I was so surprised, because I just like JJ said, I was like, me? Like, you want me to do it? Like, are you sure? So like, I had this moment of like, wow, like people are asking me to do something like this now, where I'm still kind of at the early stage of my career in, mentorship and student mentorship, supervising. I've kind of just gotten to that point now this year, and it's been really fun for me, because starting to like learn your own style and like learn your niches and what you're good at, it really comes into play as you become a mentor, because you realize what you can teach and what some things that maybe you don't want to teach. Maybe you want to pass to somebody else, but there's definitely areas of strength you find along the way. And I really can't drive home any other messages in this, but with your professional identity, it should always come out in every room that you're in.
Okay. I think that, sometimes students are surprised to learn that as faculty, we have mentors too. And that's, definitely the case for me. I think that some of my greatest mentor opportunities came from when I've been doing volunteer work in the profession. So, I made connections with some really amazing mentors when I volunteered at the ACA conference way back years and years ago as a doc student. And those mentors have continued to track my career, have continued to be supportive of my career, even though, this was well over 20 years ago. And so, when you make those connections, like Andrew's talking about, it's like, I was a room monitor of sorts at ACA, and I worked with Sam Gladding and I worked with Patricia Arredondo, and they have continued to be invested in my career and what I'm doing because they took time to get to know me then, and then they followed up with me. And there's been many other mentors across the years who have I've connected with through volunteer work and opportunities in my own education, and being CSI president of the chapter at NC State. All of these opportunities led me to connect with other people across the field. You cannot sit in isolation within your own school even. It's important, and I think, Justina, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about your experiences, because you've had some opportunities you started within our program, but then we helped make connections for you. And now you've grown exponentially with some of the connections that you have. And I think it'd be interesting to hear how you did that, and kind of like where you started from and then where you ended up. So I'm going to call on you and then talk a little bit about your experiences too.
I'm getting called out right now. So I think I was actually in an AMCD meeting, and I can't remember exactly who mentioned this, but one of my mentors from AMCD mentioned that it was important to understand your mentorship heritage and your mentorship line. So knowing who your mentor is, but who was your mentor's mentor, and so on and so forth. And that got me thinking, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, I don't really know who's in my mentorship line. So when I had the opportunity to attend the IAMFC conference earlier in January in New Orleans, I got to meet Dr. Gladding, and I was like, oh my gosh, I met Dr. Gladding. And it was so funny because the first thing I said to him was that Dr. LA was my mentor. And he was kind of like, okay. And I was like, by the way, it's really nice to meet you. So just meeting someone who mentored Dr. LA, or meeting someone who mentored some of my other mentors, I think is really important, because you see that there's like a lineage of mentorship, not just with one specific mentors, but I have multiple mentors. And I was actually on Twitter, and I started my Twitter account because of Dr. Hayden, and he works at Wake Forest, and he works with a lot of military veterans. So that was just a way for me to follow his research work. And after I did that, I also followed Dr. Japal, who's the ACA president. And I remember one day I was reading and doing my homework, and I got a notification saying that someone on Twitter had tagged me in a post. And I was kind of like, okay, but it said that Dr. Japal had tagged me, and I was like, what was she tagged me in? That's interesting. And I was kind of like, I'm scared. So when I looked at the post, it actually said that she was tagging 10 women that she was thanking for their leadership in terms of the counseling profession. I was like, wow, the president of ACA tagged me in a post thanking me for advocating for military veterans. And then I was kind of like, that really happened? Is she really tagging me? Because there were other people that were tagged in the post, that were very well developed in the field, that had like multiple doctorate degrees. And I was just kind of like, I'm just a master's student. I don't really know what I'm doing. And after that, I just started asking her questions, and then that kind of snowballed into me asking her if she was interested in co-presenting with me for this conference. So we're actually co-presenting on domestic violence and intimate partner violence at 4:00 Central Time today, in case anyone's interested. Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
Maybe we should go to the ethical.
Yes, so Discuss ethical implications and ways to identify aspects of healthy relationships.
I could start on this one. So the number one thing I think of regarding this questions about ethical implications is really kind of being careful in the way that your supervisee understands how you're speaking to them about their guidance. There's been times where I've gotten in situations where I've had someone, whether it was a mentee or a supervisee, come back to me and be like, hey, this didn't work. I tried it and it went like this. And it didn't go well because you told me to do it this way. So I believe there has to be a very strong relationship between you and your supervisee. And I think it also is important you talk about, the accountability of their work, because if I'm supervising someone who's a fellow clinician compared to a student mentorship position that I do now with, students, my message is going to be way different. For example, like talking about crisis. Whereas a student, I would be recommending them to reach out to someone else and absolutely find a professor immediately because they are not fit to handle a crisis kind of intervention style. Whereas a fellow clinician, I would be coaching them through it and I'd expect them to be able to handle it. So I do think when you decide to have a relationship in a mentorship position, it's important if you feel comfortable with that person. Because there's some people that have reached out to me and I've actually had to decline just because I felt like our relationship wasn't where it needed to be in terms of they weren't willing to grow. They weren't able to accept feedback. They had a hard time really kind of being addressed about, hey, I think in this video you could have did something different like this. And if they weren't open to that type of feedback, I had a hard time working with them. And I had to recognize if I'm going to have a hard time working with them, I'm not going to be the best mentor for them. There's going to be someone else out there that will be a better person for their style and their personality. So ethically, I think you have to be really careful with your boundaries in the relationship with your supervisee above anything. Because if you kind of are relied on, which is what I've really have not been about with anyone I supervise, I really empower them. No, you did this. Because a lot of people come to me, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be where I am now. That's not true at all. I just helped you get there. I helped you turn the light bulb on, or I pushed you down that one stair. That's how I look at it. Because if you are giving me all the credit for your commitment to your work, then it's not your work.
I'm going to piggyback off of you, Andrew, and sorry for cutting out, guys. Apparently somebody cut my internet line in my yard somehow. But so I think ethical implications are very important. I think the boundaries of a relationship are important to establish, but also my favorite part about mentorship, being mentored and now mentoring others, is understanding those boundaries and being able to abide by those boundaries with the learning aspects, but also being able to be vulnerable and connect with each other, still sharing personal experiences and growing from those. So one of my favorite experiences, well, I have a lot of favorite experiences, but two of my favorite experiences, let's go with that. I'll make it short. One of them was definitely my interviewing process. When I was a PhD student, I had the opportunity to interview with Dr. LA and also Dr. Tiffany Rush Wilson. And I learned so much from that because in my culture in Oklahoma, we're taught like, don't talk about yourself, be humble, don't brag, like everything is bragging here. And so when I interviewed, she did a wonderful job. They recorded it for me. So I had to watch myself, which is very challenging for me because I'm a perfectionist. And then they encouraged me to watch myself, but they gave me really positive feedback. But then Dr. LA was like, there's a lot of things you didn't mention about yourself that I know about you. Why didn't you say these things that really set you apart from other candidates? And so that was a huge learning experience for me too. And even from like an ethical standpoint, it's like, okay, she sees me still as a or professional, but also as one of her mentees. And that meant a lot to me too, that it was like, just because our mentorship was almost over didn't mean it was over. And so I think that was really a great way to segue into where we are now, which now we're colleagues. And I consider Dr. LA a really good friend of mine. And so I think that's the beauty of the mentorship, is you can create those boundaries and abide by them, and have mentees or mentors that also are aligned with those ethical implications and boundaries, but still are able to move past those into new relationships, and then continue those ethical implications from there. And I think that is a huge important part of mentorship. And for me, it's the most beautiful part. I look at it like a butterfly, or like a worm in a cocoon that, comes out as a butterfly. Like, they're kind of helping cocoon you, and they're making you as beautiful as you can, but you're doing the work. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. And I love that.
I think I will build on that a little bit, Dr. VanMeter, because I think that, a good mentor, and JJ, you highlighted this as well, is somebody who's willing to gatekeep as well. So it's somebody who's willing to tell you where your strengths are and where your challenges are. I'm not really serving you as a mentor if I'm always like, oh, you're wonderful, you're awesome, everything is, I have to, and I've had to have very difficult conversations with mentees where I've been like, what are you doing? And why are you doing that? Like, what's going on? And it's hard to have some of those conversations. And then there's been other situations, and I'm not going to call anybody out, but there's been other situations where I've kind of had to let people go when I knew that they were in the right profession, and I knew they were doing exactly what they needed to do, but they weren't ready yet. And I think that's where it taps into what you were just saying about, kind of the struggle is real, and letting that, worm come and cocoon itself and push out, and holding my hands up and going, I have to let you struggle. Because the only way you're going to become that beautiful butterfly is if I let you struggle. I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be like, you might want to go to the right a little or something like that. But I have to let the person struggle on their own. And when they're ready, come back, which that has probably been one of the hardest lessons for me when you think about, what I think about the ethics of allowing for autonomy, allowing for that person to make their own decisions, even when you see sometimes they might not be making the best decision right then, but it's the best decision for them in that moment in their life. And just like with their clients, we have to respect that autonomy and give them the space. But I also believe that a lot of these people I've mentored so they can speak to it, but I feel like it's providing that unconditional, like, no matter what you do, I still got your back. I'm still going to be here for you no matter what. If you fall on your face, I'm going to be like, wow, that really hurt. How did that feel? And then, be here to help you move forward. But I think it's about creating that space to make mistakes, to fall flat on your face, and know that somebody's still going to be there when you stand up and shake yourself off. So I think for me, that's where a big ethical challenge has been in my growth as a mentor, is learning how to keep my hands up and not get too involved, but providing the support that's necessary to help the person grow.
Can I jump in briefly, Dr. Stretch, Dr. LA? One of the things too to keep in mind is you are talking about facilitating a very safe environment. And not every supervisor mentor relationship has that level of safety. So as someone who has been mentored by you, I thank you for that. I really appreciate that in you. And also, acknowledge that sometimes the situations are not quite that safe, and we still have to find ways to get our needs met and find ways to approach and work with someone when that space is a little icky.
Yeah.
I had a client even yesterday who had that same experience as an adult woman in a really great position, who has a supervisor or a mentor who is not really giving her what she needs, and how difficult and stressful that can be as well. So when you have it, please appreciate that you have those safe spaces to engage with a mentor who is willing and able to help you facilitate your career goals.
I think it's a great point, Dr. Rush Wilson, because I think, in several situations, I've had horrible mentors. Like I have one supervisor who I learned how not to supervise from. flat out. Like, I learned everything about what not to do from this one supervisor. But in that situation, I also had the fortitude to find other people to support me. So I want to challenge people too. If your assigned mentor isn't a good match, there's a lot of other people out there. So don't feel like it's always has to be a formal relationship of mentoring or supervising. Yes, you do need, when it's a formal assigned supervisor, there's some respect and you have to do some of what they say, but it doesn't mean you can't get outside support. Doesn't mean you can't figure out someone who can provide that sense of safety for you outside of that. So you're not limited to one person being the be all do all too. And also, I want to challenge people to take recourse. When somebody is really doing something unethical or harmful, you have an obligation to speak up under the ACA Code of Ethics too. So I really want to challenge people to find their power, to find people who can support them in that, because I've been in abusive situations with supervisors and people who claim to be mentors. That's not a mentor to me. When you're causing harm or when you're doing something, that's not somebody who's really a mentor. I want to challenge people to be able to speak up and have their voices heard and continue to speak up until your voice is heard, or remove yourself from the situation so that you don't continue to be harmed in that way. So I just really want to challenge that to people, because I know I can speak for Dr. Rush-Wilson. We've both been in an abusive situation before, and we had to remove ourselves, but it took a while for us to figure that out. And it took a lot of great people outside of those systems to say, you shouldn't be being treated this way. This isn't healthy. Have you seen that? You know, and it was those people who really cared the most about me to be able to say that, because it wasn't always the easiest thing to hear. So, yes.
Well, and I think Dr. LA, to piggyback on that, sometimes too, you have really good mentors, but then you have mentors that you can add more mentors to that awesome mentorship that, you know, so just because you think you have a bad one doesn't mean you have to go out and get more. You could also do that if you have great ones. Right. Because like I know for me, especially this first year and full time here at the Chicago school, it's been really important for me to use my mentors and my colleagues in different ways. Like Dr. Tiffany Rush-Wilson really got me through a really heavy stint in the last month. Right. And so it was important for me to reach out to her and to have her also be supportive. And I learned a lot from her, because I was, like I said, I'm a perfectionist. So my biggest fear was disappointing Dr. LA. And so I had to work through some of that myself. And like Dr. Tiffany Rush-Wilson was there to say, hey, I really think that you respect Dr. LA and you're really worried about messing up. And in doing that, you know, you may be not doing the best that you can do because you're so worried about it. And so that was really important for me. And the same when I stepped in with Dr. Stauer. Dr. Stauer played an important role for me to learn the process and the system, and I still reach out to her. And so it's really important to have multiple mentors that do different things for you.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And I think I've seen this, JJ, with you, where you had to figure out who could mentor you in certain areas of your professional career. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I've seen that in your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know when to jump in because it was like such good points, but definitely Dr. LA is a meshing of like, because you know there's no one person. Now if you do find a person who is excellent and awesome, then you definitely want to keep that mentorship, but also understand it's okay to add to your repertoire, I guess, your clinical repertoire of mentors that may have different research interests that you may not necessarily know. It's not for more so like research interests. It's just this person demonstrates where you want to be 5 years down the road as far as like their clinical output and how they carry themselves, not necessarily content. You could definitely pull for them and draw from them. So it's so many awesome professionals that are out there, and we're grateful to have like some localized within our program. But for me, I knew as my identity as a queer Black man, navigating an online program, it was different for me because I know in an online program there's the misconception that we are distant and we are detached, but I found the most community on this online program, and most of them I haven't physically seen face to face, but we talk like almost every day. So it's just a meshing of, will this supervisor work for me? And I have to be honest with myself and say, hey, although our relationship, our rapport is wonderful, maybe I'm not ready, or the other person's not ready, and it's okay to vocalize those things. And I put in the comments that mentorship between mentee and mentor, student mentorship, vice versa, it's a reciprocal process. It's not unilateral. It's not the mentor just providing everything to the mentee, and the mentee is passive. You will be the person that has to step into your clinical, your professional identity once it's all said and done. So definitely take advantage of the fact that you can be vocal, and you can definitely figure out, because I had a couple mentors in the beginning. I said, oh, well, this is not necessarily a good fix. But again, piggyback off of Dr. VanMeter, I wanted to impress. I wanted to show that I'm this star child, and like I'm this wonderful graduate student. But in reality, I was like, okay, I'm not getting anything out of it. And so it's also how you communicate that to the professional, and to alleviate most concerns, the professional, the mentor already knows. And so they just are waiting for you to vocalize those concerns and be like, okay, how can we come up to an alternate approach? And usually it's just in a different way of communicating or a different way of messaging. And then going from there, everything works. So it's about being vocal, being communicative, understanding that you are not a passive recipient in the mentor-mentee relationship, but you are just as active and just as involved in it as the mentor. Again, it's the GPS again. I'm going to harp on that because they are where you will want to be for whatever reason, and you just have to vocalize, hey, I'm not feeling. Just more recently, I had a conversation with Dr. Crowley about imposter syndrome, and Dr. Ford about imposter syndrome at this stage, because I'm so close to graduating. I'm like, will I be a good counselor? And those feelings kind of crept up, and I'm like, okay, the self-doubt came, and then like, okay, now I'm not feeling as centered. And then just within a 30-minute conversation, Dr. Crowley completely helped me reframe the way I was viewing myself and the expectations I have for myself. And boom, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling wonderful. But I do understand, oh, Dr. Crowley has been there. Dr. LA has been there. Dr. Ford has been there. Dr. VanMeter has been there. I can vocalize those things without feeling like it's a weakness on my part, that I'll be seen as a bad counselor because I'm dealing with things. But that actually makes me an incredible, stronger counselor, actually, for being able to admit and acknowledge my own limitations, say how I'm not feeling 100%. How do I deal with these things? What tips do you have? And that being the most vocal has brought me like the strongest part as far as like my matriculation as a grad student thus far is being vocal.
Okay, let's move on to the next question for the sake of time. What characteristics do you look for when seeking out a mentor, and what tips do you have about connecting with potential mentors?
Well, I think one thing that we're all highlighting here is in every mentor we've had, we've all admired them in some way. That's something that I look for in every mentor I have. I have an athletic mentor. As an athlete, I run and bodybuild, and he can do things that I've always wanted to be able to do. So I look to him as someone who could teach me, and I admire that. Even with Dr. LA, I admire her ability to lead such a successful program and be so just observant, forthcoming, vulnerable. There's so many things I admire about Dr. LA. Dr. Soley, I admire her ability to take time and just be personal with me, share her story, tell me who she is and ask who I am. Like, there's so many things in mentors I have admired. So that's the first thing that comes to mind when I look at my mentors in front of me, because I've had, like we talked about, not so good mentors, and I've had to remove myself out of the situation. And just going back to the communication, there's times where you're going to be in situations where you feel like you're stuck. You feel like, I have to get these license hours, or I have to get this time in with this person to get my certification, this and that. And at the end of the day, if it's that harmful to you, I think you just have to cut the cord eventually. Where I literally had to tell my past supervisor that I'm not going to be able to continue, because, you know, I'm not going to be able to work here under this like toxicity. And I ended up leaving as my first job after my master's program. So it felt kind of disheartening. It felt like, am I in the right profession? I had those feelings of self-doubt that JJ was talking about. And then I went back to my other mentor at my old job, and it literally took me maybe 2 phone calls. And I said, you know what, man, like, let's do this. Like, I'm going to come back and like, let's reconnect and let's rebuild and pick up where we left off. So I think like recognizing how harmful something is to you is really important. But I think like really in every mentor you have, you should find something that you admire and find something in them that you believe in, because the mentors that have kind of fallen off for me, I've noticed that there's been a lack of motivation there. So when I sense there's a lack of motivation, I kind of back down. My first mentor in the mental health field was a behavioral analyst, and I was very fresh to the field. I wanted to learn everything about ABA. And then when he told me he wasn't pursuing his license and he wasn't pursuing his certification and basically working with kids with autism, I kind of fell off, and I really didn't work with him as much anymore because I got this sense of a lack of motivation and willingness to grow. And I found myself kind of looking for someone else in that moment instead.
For me, what I look for in a mentor is, I'm a personal connection I thrive on connection. And so just being human and being authentic. So I look for a sense of authenticity and vulnerability, but mutual vulnerability. So I like it when we share personal stories and have empathy, and my mentor understands my personality and how to challenge me in a way that's productive to me. But then also let me present hard conversations. A lot of mentorship with me has been working past myself. And so having a mentor understand that and know that about me is really important, because I may not forwardly say that, or I may not even recognize that I'm doing that. And so for me, looking for a mentor that is really good at understanding and seeing me as I am and being able to be authentic and vulnerable with me as well and share their experiences, that's what I look for in a mentor, as well as like growing on your strengths and providing opportunities. I live in Oklahoma, so a lot of the clinicians that I've seen are very small picture. They're like, oh, well, we're going to stay here because we're comfortable. I like to be uncomfortable, so I want somebody to push me to go to ACA and to do these bigger picture things in the profession and get out there and really connect with other people. So that has been an important part for me, looking for a good mentor. And so the tips that I would have for finding a mentor is find somebody that suits your personality, but that also you can connect with on multiple levels, not just the level of, okay, I've learned and now I feel like we're capped out. Because for me, being open to that learning process, it never ends. And so even if your relationship changes, I'm constantly learning from the people that I'm connecting with. And that's important when I look for a mentor is, are you invested in me? Because I will be completely invested in you, because that's my personality. So let me be invested in you for a lifetime, because that's what I'm going to expect from this mentorship. And so far what I found is nothing less. So I think that's a good tip.
I think that for me, one of the things I would encourage people to look for in a mentor is somebody who makes mistakes and is willing to own them. Somebody who can, share what they did wrong as much as they can share what they did right. I'm very hesitant of people who are perfect, people who only share what's good and what they've done well. I think as a mentor, I have to be willing to share the times that I fell flat on my face and what that was like and what did I learn from it. So I have to be, fallible. I have to be human. And I think that piece is important, because I think when we present ourselves as if we know it all and we've done everything and there's absolutely nothing else we can learn, then it sets up an impossible expectation for our mentees, because they'll never be able to achieve that, because we're not achieving that either, So we have to be real. We have to be human in what we do. And I'll share a quick little story with two people that I mentor in our program. I mean, I mentor a lot of students in our program, but the other day, in getting ready for the conference, Box, which is our cloud, scrambled our program the day we were about to release it. And I was on the phone with two mentees and I cussed. I let it out. I just let it out. I was so frustrated. I was so done, with COVID and all the pressures and everything that was going on. I just shared exactly how I felt about the situation. And one of the students was like, I've never heard Dr. L.A. cuss before. And that's not who I am truly, is typically as a professional, but I was frustrated, and I felt like it was important for them to know it was okay to be frustrated. We had lost hours worth of work, and it was okay. And once we were able to all talk about it, we were able to come up with a plan and move forward. But I have to be able to be real. And I want my mentors to be real with me, whether it's telling me what they really think about what I'm doing or where I am, or just sharing their own experiences, and I can learn from their experiences.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add beyond the fact that when I seek a mentor or one gravitates towards me, it's just transparency, just realness, honesty. You know, I don't need this perfect mentor. I need someone that's real. Like, and I'll be frank, Dr. Ford, uh, like our first 2 meetings together, I'm thinking, oh, it's gonna be like a gradual introduction to counseling, all these nice, wonderful things. No, the first session him and I met, and he talked to me. He literally like laid it on me. He got me like all the way together. I'm like, excuse me. I'm like, who do you think you are? But I'm so thankful for him because he's been my mentor for about 6 years now. And he is one of the first people that I do call if I have any type of issues, and he's honest and he's vocal and he keeps it real and he's able to relate to me as my identity as a Black, seeking to be a counselor, Black gay counselor. So many things that I don't have to re-explain, and he's able to be transparent, to be honest, and also keep in mind of like ethical mandates as far as things I need to be considerate of. So transparency is my number one thing.
Okay, so let's try to answer the last question so we can have some time for some questions. The last question is, why is student mentorship so crucial to growth, both personally and professionally? And if you could get like a quick rundown, that'd be great.
All right, I'll start. I think it's really important because it provides an external and internal connection, personally and professionally, but it gives you that sense of community. It also provides perspectives on multiple levels. So seeing you in the present is really important because you will grow or you've come a long way. And so instead of looking back or forward all the time, it's like also being able to see who you are and where you're at in the here and now. And then I also think support, that extra support when experiences of hardship occur or struggle, and learning from those experiences together so you don't feel alone on that journey. When you are a mentor, I love being a mentor now. That's my favorite part of this job. And so when you're a mentor, I think just watching the struggle is difficult, and being able to allow space for the people to struggle has been my biggest learning curve right now. And I've gotten a lot of support from Dr. Rush Wilson and Dr. LA on that aspect of mentorship. And so I think it's important to understand that that's kind of a blessing, is having them be supportive, but also let you have the space to make mistakes. And so that's really important aspect of mentorship.
Yeah, just quickly, if it has been stressed enough, it's just the fact that you have so much to look forward to as a counselor that everything does not have to be done right now. And I look forward to learning each and every day in this counseling field, because people have such a singular view of counseling. And it is not that if you're not a counselor, there's so many things you have to work on yourself, external to you, and be mindful of, and be considerate of different cultures and different sexual orientation, gender identities, and different people will approach you. You have the responsibility to treat that person with the same respect and unconditional positive regard, and maintain that therapeutic alliance while also being cognizant of your own biases and your own beliefs, and maintain that throughout the lifetime that you will be a counselor. So I think mentorship is very important because it gives you an opportunity to work on the things while you have the ability to work on things, to have someone who is supportive in your corner, who's been where you've been, and is going to be there in your corner, regardless of where they go geographically. You know, you also have, you always have that support. And I think in a nutshell, mentorship has afforded me, and I guess I can speak for everyone else, it's afforded us opportunity to grow rather rapidly, but also being able to look forward to the successes as well as the failures, but also knowing that this is for the betterment of the profession and the clients that we'll ultimately serve.
Yeah, I'll add. I really just want to say, like, it's so important, both personally and professionally, because in moments when you're with a client and you feel like you're struggling, there's an honest attitude and an honest thought that you have in the back of your mind that should be coming out in those mentorship sessions, where when you're meeting with that person, you should be able to tell them exactly how you're feeling. Like the other day, I had told my mentor, "Hey, I really don't like this dad. Like, I really don't. And she asked me, she's like, how does that come out in your work? And my first response was, oh, I don't know if it does that much. It's like, no, it is. Like, I promise you it is. But it's moments like that where I'm able to identify something, an attitude I have or a thought I have, and how that comes out in my sessions. And I'm able to connect, why am I struggling with this person? Whereas if I didn't have that mentorship and that person to talk about it with, I might continue doing what I'm doing and not even recognize it. That's the biggest thing to me in the growth of mentorship, because if you're just in your office all day, or you're on your computer all day, really not talking to anybody, you're handling, maybe 25, 30 clients by yourself, you literally feel like you're on an island by yourself. So you need to connect with people. You need to have people there for you. So I think like perspective is huge, getting other perspective and just utilizing other people's minds and their thoughts based on their backgrounds, the diversity they have, is super important to change your thinking.
And I'm just going to sum up what Andrew just said, which is nothing great has ever been built alone. Nothing great has ever been built alone. And I think that's a really important lesson to keep in mind.
And I think it's also really important to, the importance of mentorship too, is to help hone in on your expectations. Because those of us in master's programs or in PhD programs, our expectations are high. Like we are, especially of ourselves. And so for me, mentorship has been important too in honing in on those expectations. Like, okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Or, it's okay to have downtime, or it's okay that you've done all of this in a 3-year period and you don't have to constantly be rushing around and wearing yourself out in exhaustion. And so it's really important. I think that's a really important key too, as a student, to have a mentor. And as a mentor, I'm learning very quickly that I'm helping set people's expectations, and not that I'm lowering them. I'm just saying, pace yourself.
Does anyone have any questions? I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2. Feel free to unmute yourself or ask your question in the chat.
Hey, Justina, this is Dr. Crowley. I guess I would want to ask everyone on the panel how they came to form these mentor relationships. Is it like a formal interview where you talk to someone and decide, yes, I want you to be my mentor, or does it kind of create itself organically?
Dr. Crowley, I'll answer that. I've had multiple situations. So I've had it to where it organically presented itself. For example, Dr. LA kind of fell into my lap, which was, oh my gosh, it was amazing. Dr. Tiffany Rush-Wilson fell into my lap. You and Dr. Soley, Dr. Crowley, fell into my lap whenever I did field work. So I have really had a great experience with you guys, because I haven't necessarily had to search for that. You guys were just wonderful to me from the beginning. But I have had too in the past, when I was in the master's program, searching for that mentorship. And I did interview people formally. And there were a few that I was like, yeah, we're not a good fit. I really respect you, and I want you as a colleague one day, but this isn't a good fit. So that interview process was really hard for me, and I learned from it. But I ended up with a wonderful supervisor and mentor in that, and we're still connected, and we speak probably once or twice a week. So I think there's different avenues and ways to get to that. But yeah, I've done it in multiple different ways.
I think one of the coolest things is when you are a mentor and then that person becomes a mentor. And I've had my first situation like that with Justina, which is really cool, because she fell into my lap as I was a Res 2 buddy, and we worked together at residency. And here we are now working together as colleagues. And I'm able to look at her as someone that I can grow from. And she is teaching me so much. Whereas before, it felt like I was the mentor to her, but I feel like we're each other's mentors, which is really cool. So I think most of the time they have fell in my lap, as she said as well. But there's been also occasions where, the student residency chairs that I've hired, everyone started with a formal interview. So everyone had to interview and speak with me for at least 45 minutes. and then that led to me being their mentor.
Do you mind?
Well,
Okay,
the ones that fall into our lap are, keep in mind that we choose to keep you around. Dr. Crowley, Dr. LA, and Dr. Freshelson, we chose you.
I'd just like to thank everyone before we close out for coming to our panel discussion. There's been a lot of great discussion today and also in the chat box. If you have any questions, please send that to Danita Hudson. Her email is danitahudson@thechicagoschool.edu, and I'm going to put that in the chat right now.